Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to day 15 of our 30-day accelerator, which means you've made it to the halfway point. Now, we have done a lot in the last couple of weeks, so I hope you guys are very proud of all the progress that you are making, and I hope you're starting to feel more and more comfortable with the platform. Now, what we're going to do in today's training is I'm going to jump back into my account, I'm going to open that sales page back up, and I'm going to take you through just a few things to look out for when you are customizing pages, whether it's your sales page or your home page or any page at all, because the Kajabi page builder takes a little bit to get used to. So let me share my screen and share a few things with you now. All right, guys, so here we are back inside of my demo account. We're still in the website area under pages, over to the landing tab, which is where all your individual pages live. And then I have opened up the sales page for my Sassy Bucks program. Okay, so over here like this. Now I'm just going to scroll down the page and I'm going to point things out as I see them. And hopefully some of these things are things that perhaps, you've come across or things that you've been wondering about. So I'm just going to make sure that I point out the obvious things, and hopefully this is going to fill some of the gaps for you. Now, I did mention when we started sales pages that the first thing I would do is go into your settings tab, into Style Guide, and put your branding in there, because that's going to save you a little bit of time with the customization. For a sales page, I would hide the header section, okay, all your menu items, your logo, all that sort of stuff. If you would like to hide sections, whether it's your header or any of these sections, perhaps there's a section that looks good on desktop but doesn't look that good on mobile. So you might want to create two separate hero sections, one that displays on desktop, not on mobile, and one that displays on mobile and not on desktop. For any of these sections and the header, you can click into them and you'll see here you've got a desktop layout section and a mobile layout section. So if we go into desktop, if for whatever reason this section didn't look good on desktop, you could hide it. Okay, so it disappears. But then when I go up here to the mobile view, right at the top here, if you click that mobile icon, okay, that section is still showing on mobile, right? So there will be times, especially with our templates, you might see over in the sidebar, come back over here, you might see that we have labeled a section Hero Desktop and then a second section Hero Mobile, which means we've actually created two separate sections, one that we are just displaying on desktop, one that we're just displaying on mobile, and you would need to customize both. On that note, once you have gone through the page and you've done all your desktop customizations, make sure you do come up here and switch it to the mobile view. I never worry about these tablet views, to be honest, because you can't design in Kajabi for tablet view. And sometimes when you have a look at how it's going to look on tablet, sometimes it looks a little bit ugly and it freaks a few people out. So I don't look at it on tablet because you can't really do that much about it. And often the tablet view that it gives you, if you were to go and look at it on your own iPad, it's often not that bad. Also, interesting statistic, only 4% of people actually surf the web or go and view website pages on tablet. So it's such a small amount of people who are likely visiting your website on a tablet that I just wouldn't let it stress you out. But once you are done doing the desktop customization, switch it over to the mobile view and make sure you go through the page in mobile view and make sure that any mobile only sections or blocks have also been customized, especially if you're working with a template. Go through and check that none of the template images or template copy are still showing on mobile. All right, so another key power tip for you today. All right, so first thing I'm going to talk about here, you see in this hero section that the block rolls over the background. Now, if you want that effect in certain sections on your page, if you click into the section, so not into the block, but into the section, and you go into background, the way that we made it roll over the background is to check this box for fixed background image. So if I take that off and now we scroll, you see that the block and the image stay together. So there'll be probably a few spots on your full page where you quite like that rolling effect. I don't do it all the time, but it is a nice effect. I like it. It just gives a little something to the page. Now, while we are talking about background images, you see here media type for the background. You've got none if you wanted to go with like just a color, and you could change it to whatever color you want down here. Say pink, for example. That, okay. You could also go with video if you wanted to. Now, background videos can be a little bit slow to load, and sometimes some smartphones don't load them at all. So my preference is just to use either none or image in the background. And for video, I usually would just add that as a block sitting on top of the page like this, rather than in the background. But up to you. If you do decide to go for a video, just make sure you do test it on a few devices and see how quickly your page is loading. Now, if you choose image and you upload an image and the image isn't showing, then that's one of, well, usually that's because you've got like a block color on like this. Now, if you were to take the transparency down, then you see you've got some of the image here behind. So that's like adding like a filter on top of your image then. Or if you want to see the image in full, if you set it down to transparent or just remove the color, then you'll be able to see the image there. Now, if you've put an image here and you still can't see it and the background color is transparent, chances are that up here it's set to none rather than to image, okay? Make sure it is set to image if you want an image to show. Now, when you put an image into this background, if you're like the focal point of your image is over here and you've got a block of text sitting on top of it and you think, oh, how do I get the text over here? So again, it's in the section settings, not in the block settings. In the section settings, if you go down to desktop layout, you'll see that the horizontal alignment is set to the right. And if you change it to the left, it's going to move over there. So then if you had something interesting here, that would now show up. Okay, and you could also center it if you wanted to, just like this. Okay, so well, I'll put it back to the way that it was, but that one often comes in handy. Okay, we're going to come down here now. In this particular template of ours, Softly Does It, we have this underline effect in a lot of blocks. And it's not immediately apparent. How do you change the color on the line? Like you can change the color on the text. I could come in here and say, oh, I want it to be green. Oh, it's already green. Pink, for example. Okay, but that doesn't change the underline color. So if you're using one of our templates and we've done this, what you need to do is click into the source code. And you'll see here, it takes a little bit to wrap your head around it, but you see here that we have put border bottom. That's the width, 2. I mean, if you wanted it to be thicker, you could make it a 4. And then we've got your hex color right there. So if you update the hex color to something else, I'll just make it black for now. And that's the font color there, okay? But this is the line color, this first one. And if I just save it, you can see it got thicker and it went black. Okay, so if you're wondering like, how do I change these, this color of these underlines, that is done inside of the source code there. Okay, now we'll come down a little bit. All right, so the spacing actually, before we move on too far, you can see I've got a little bit of a gap here between these two things. Now, if I click into the section, so not into the blocks, but into the section, and I go again into desktop layout, you can see here that horizontal alignment, it's not set to left, it's not set to right. This time it's set to space around, which is going to give a little gap between the blocks if there's space to give a space. So what we've got here is an image block that is 5 columns wide, and we've got a text block that is 5 columns wide, and each section can be up to 12 columns. So we've got 2 columns spare, which means we do have enough space to create a bit of a gap. Okay, so if you go into the desktop layout and you set it to space around, it'll create a little bit of a gap. And if you set it to space between, it will create the maximum gap. Okay, and usually I don't go for space between. Usually I find the gap is too big, so I normally just set it to space around. Now, if you set it to space around and no gap appears, then the chances are this block or this block, like the blocks together, add up to 12 wide, and then you don't actually have any space to create a gap, okay? So something like we made this bigger, and we made this one bigger. Okay, so now they're 12 columns. You can see they're now up against each other, even though in the settings, I put it to space around, all right? So it may as well just be set to space center, which is effectively what's happening. They're just butting up towards each other. Like if I change this back to 5 and I change this one back to 5, and we look at the desktop layout, okay, that is set to horizontal alignment center, which means it just literally pulls the blocks together in the middle. But now when I go with space around, spaces them back out like this. Now, while we're here in this section, I can see that the section padding is set to 50 top, 50 bottom. So that's the white space up here above your blocks and below your blocks before you move on to the next section. If you wanted some added white space, you just make it 100. You can see it just builds in extra space for you above and below. Okay, so here is the same thing, but the blocks are in reverse. Now, if, for example, you have got image, text, and then in the next section, you've got text, image. If you were thinking about that in mobile view, you're going to end up with image and then text and then more text and then image because they're going to stack on top of each other. Now, if I change this to mobile view, okay, so we've got image, then we've got text, then we've got image, then we've got text. Like, how did that happen? Because it should have been, if we just read from left to right, it should have been image, text, text, image, okay? But what you can do with image blocks, if I click into this block, and over here in the mobile layout section, there's a little checkbox there to say, put the image on top, okay? So I've checked the box there. If I didn't check the box, and we go back to this mobile view, then we've got the problem, okay? Then we've got image, text, text, image, okay? So, and I wanted to break it up a little bit. So by me saying, no, put that second image on top, just moves it to the top of the section. Okay, I'll come down, oops, where am I? Here. All right, so here we've got another one of these background images with the text rolling over it, okay? So we've got a fixed background image set there. Now here we've got an image block, and then we've got a text block that's sitting on top of this image. And if I go in and have a look at this text block, and we go down to the desktop layout, and the way that we got it to sit over this was to add a negative spacing. So the default is like this, where they are, where they're next to each other like that. And then what we did was we said, okay, just make that -50 so it sits over the top. Now it looks here like it is sitting over the top, but sometimes with Kajabi pages, you do this, and then when you go to preview it, the text, which is -50, it's actually sitting behind the image rather than on top. It's a bit of a problem. There is no setting inside of here to say, I want this to be the top layer. You can't do that. There's no little checkbox yet to switch on and say and tell the Kajabi section, hey, this is the block that needs to sit on the top. Now you could add a little bit of code to make that block the front block, the forward block, but we have a little hack, a workaround. Okay, if you set it up like this and then you go to preview the page and actually the wrong block is sitting on the front, what you can do, in most cases, doesn't always work, but in most cases, the block that you want to sit on the front, which is the text, if you go in and add just a little simple animation to it, any animation, so I'm going to say the type of animation is a fade. I want it to fade in either in no direction at all, just sort of appear gently, or you could have it fade from a direction of the screen. And then I want the duration, I don't want it to be like a super quick fade. I just want it to be like a gentle transition. So I'm just going to set it to 1.5 seconds. And then if I save that and we wait for it to do its thing, and I go back over to my page over here and I refresh, okay, so you can see that it's now just faded in from the side, and adding that animation has forced this block to now sit at the front, okay? So that's going to save you in a lot of instances. It doesn't always work. Sometimes coding is the only way, but for most things, this will fix it for you, okay, if you're having a layering issue with your page. Okay, then we come down here. All right, now here we've got like a text block with bullet points, and you could just go for a text block with bullets, something like, I think we've got one up here. This, okay, that is just a text block. If I show you over in the side, it's just a text block there with bullets. But sometimes you want something a little bit more interesting than bullets, and ticks or like stars or something can be fun. So what we did to work around that was rather than using a standard text block here, we used a pricing card. Okay, this is a pricing card. And if I click into it, the pricing card has a few settings that we didn't use. We didn't fill in the name of the price, like pay in full or payment plan or any of that. We left that off. We left off the price. We left off the sub heading. We just used the text portion and we put our bullet points in, but those pricing cards have this option to use custom list icon. Now, if I uncheck that, it'll just go back to a bullet point list, a boring bullet point list, like the one that was higher up. But if I check that on, I can now say, okay, do I want it to be like little ticks, or do I want it to be pluses, or do I want it to be stars? And what color do I want those little icons to be? Okay, so that is just a little tip, something that we do just to make things look a little bit more interesting without having to bring in any coding. All right, now down here, what I'm going to talk about is we've got some boxes here and they're all the same height. Now we've used feature blocks, which means you can add an image to the top of them if you want to. Now, if I go into the desktop layout, we've checked on a little setting here for equal height blocks. Okay, that makes all of these blocks the same size. Even, okay, if I was to go in here and make this text longer, okay, the blocks next to it just increase in height so that all these blocks are equal height. If I didn't have that little setting switched on and one of these texts is longer than the other, like it's a couple of lines longer, to show you if I switch it off. Okay, so now everything's sort of like out of whack and it looks a bit ugly. So if you've got an issue where your boxes are not lining up, go into the desktop layout of the section, not in a block, but of the section. Scroll down here and just check on this box for equal height blocks. Okay, and that's going to make all your blocks the same size, even if one text is much longer than the other text. Let's get rid of this. Okay. Like that. All right, we'll come down here. Something else, I mean, we've done the same thing here. So if I go into this section, we've got equal height blocks. Even if the testimonials, if one is a lot longer than the others, the blocks are still going to be the same height. But one thing to look out for here, if you are lining up images like this, even with this setting on for equal height blocks, if the images themselves are not the same ratio, like square or like 450 by 450, or, you know, they're not the same as each other, if one's just like a little bit taller than wider, then even with this setting switched on, it looks a little bit messy. So if you're going to have images like this side by side in a row, I would encourage you to firstly create them in somewhere like Canva, where you know that the exact dimensions of each of them are the same. Then download them and then upload them into Kajabi so that everything, you know, is in a nice row and lines up top and bottom. Okay, anything else that I need to tell you guys? Let's see, this is an actual use of a pricing card. Now you can see over here, I've hidden one of them. This particular template started with 3 pricing options. Like this, okay, and I decided, oh, I'm only going to offer 2. I would encourage you, especially with templates, that rather than delete, unless you think like you're never, ever going to use that section, I would encourage you to hide it rather than to delete it, just in case you want to add it back later. If you do delete it and you think, oh, how am I going to like quickly create a 3rd block? Very easy just to come up here to the 3 little dots and just duplicate something that you have already applied your branding to. Okay, now when you duplicate it, it puts it to the bottom. You can always just drag and drop it into where you need it, like that. And you can always rename it so that it's easier to find it later. You know, like, oops, and like this. Okay, so renaming things, always super, super useful, and duplicating things that you've already spent time customizing, also super useful. Again, you do have the option, like you can put 3 things or 4 or 5 or 6 next to each other, as long as the combined width doesn't add up to more than 12 columns. Now, if you have 2 things next to each other and you actually, for whatever reason, want this to be on the next line, and it fits here, so you're like, oh, how am I going to get this to go onto the next line? If you go into the block that you want to be on its own line, so I click into this block, and we come down to the desktop layout, there's also a checkbox there to place this block on its own row. Okay, so then that just moves it down here to the bottom, and then you would just be left with these two up here. So, it could fit, but you've just told the system, no, I don't want to make it fit. Just please put it on the next line by doing that. Okay, we went into countdown clocks yesterday. I think we're okay with all of that. Equal height blocks, yes. Okay, I think, guys, that's probably enough to keep you going. I think. Down in the footer, just a reminder, we don't usually put social icons, so I hid the social icons because I don't want people getting distracted when they're on the sales page and like going off to Instagram and not coming back. If you want these links to be smaller, if you just come down into the typography section of your footer, and you could make them like really little if you wanted to. Make sure if you're changing things on desktop, you probably also want to change it on mobile. It's smaller like this. Now, if you're working with a Kajabi basic plan and it's got the Kajabi branding and you don't particularly want to show powered by Kajabi in the footer, if you're on a basic plan, you can't switch it off. But what you can do is you could say, all right, the footer background color is white. Okay, you can see it there, it's just white. If I make the powered by Kajabi text also white, okay, now it's still there, but you can't see it. Okay, so just a little workaround for you if the powered by Kajabi is not something that you want to be showing in the footer and it's not something that you can switch off inside of your site settings. All right, guys, so that is it for me on this one. So back to you guys to have some fun with the customization of this page, your sales page. Hopefully you've got a bit of a foundational understanding of Canva. Now with all of our templates, we do give you all of the Canva designs that we use to create our templates. If you can't find them, let me know and I will send you a link. But then, once you open them up in your own Canva account, then you can put in your own images, swap out any colors, download it from Canva, upload it into Kajabi in the place of the images that we have there right now. And then all of a sudden your page is going to look a lot more like you and a lot less like me. So hopefully today's tutorial was useful, but if you get stuck on anything, just send me a screenshot or even better, like a little screen recording of what you're trying to do and what it's not doing for you. And then I can come back with some help. All right, guys, have some fun. Bye.